Hello, everybody. Today on the Recipients podcast series, we are talking to the outstanding Karen Hedley. Hello,
Thank you.
Karen.
It's very exciting to be here.
Absolutely. Karen is the recipient of the 2025 National Award for Disability Leadership in Innovation. Always a hotly contested award, well, they all are, but this one is particularly exciting because there's so much happening in our community around innovation. So let me tell you a little bit about Karen, who is an easy read specialist, driving the visibility of people with disability through accessible communication. As founder of the Easy Read Toolbox and co-founder of the International Easy Read Community of Practice, she's transforming how organisations represent and engage disabled people. Really high-grade work. It's fantastic stuff. I'll tell you a bit about the Innovation Award so we're all clear about just what it takes to receive this award, which is for achieving outcomes to the status of disabled people by working outside the box, developing new systems, technology or tools. And in fact, I'm just having a think about the fact that Karen's probably doing all of those things, in fact. Yeah. So the awards, of course, were designed by a coalition of disabled people from disabled people's organisations, including the DLI, but from our representative organisations. And so we were really keen on that achieving outcomes to the status of disabled people as part of it. So it's not just about doing something, but it's about getting stuff happening. And so receiving one of these awards is actually a milestone statement around the fact that you've actually got something done, not that you're actually trying to do it, which is, something that's often mistaken in award systems. So welcome, Karen. Congratulations. Massive moment to receive the Innovation Award. It's great to see you.
Thank you. And it's good to actually hear what my team nominated me for and what they said about me. I honestly wasn't quite sure what I had been nominated for. So, yes, good to hear
Fantastic.
that.
I love the fact that these things just sort of happen at people and they go, oh, it's like this was a complete out of the blue moment. So good. I'm thinking back to some of the innovation recipients, and, we had the lovely Aaron last year who was building a platform for supported housing. The year before was the glorious Rod King up in Newcastle, who had built his entire independent system for being able to live independently after he came out of 60 years of living in an institution. And the things that people have done with the Innovation Awards, and you've been building online tools around Easy Read and systems and processes, but also putting in place the International Community of Practice, which is another mechanism. So really important stuff. Why are you doing this? How'd you get into the whole Easy Read thing? Why do you think it's important? Why did you go down the path of developing the toolbox concept? So tell us a bit about that as well. Yeah. Why, Karen? Why on earth? What the?
So I feel a bit like I've just kind of fallen into a lot of these things, as I did with disability way back when. But in terms of Easy Read, I was working in self-advocacy around 2011 or 12, when I think Easy Read was the first time that I'd heard of Easy Read, and I just I loved being able to write so more people could read it, but I also found that I had a natural talent for it, and I really felt like I'd found my niche. Sorry, when I was doing that job, and then I had thought about setting up a business, but I wasn't really ready to jump in and do that until the 2020s, I think it was. And I actually had another business, Next Level Inclusion, where I was writing Easy Read for other people, training people in Easy Read, which was going really well, and had the idea of setting up the toolbox to provide all the tools and education that people need to do it themselves. And so I set that up through a social enterprise business accelerator. and everybody started coming there to do the easy read. So I ended up closing down Next Level Inclusion and just had the toolbox. Didn't really actually understand what a social enterprise was when I first started, but it was pretty much what I wanted to do anyway, which is having an impact, a positive impact upon the community. And the same for employing people with disabilities. It was because of my background and because I have three young adults with autism who had found it really difficult to find work. It had taken each of them over a year after finishing school to find a job. I knew that that was the kind of people that I wanted to employ, people who were disabled and perhaps finding it harder to find jobs. And so that's just what happened. It just seems to have kind of grown in its own way, and it's been a really great journey.
Yeah. So what does the toolbox actually do? I mean, you do easy read stuff, you put it together still, but there's an extra layer on it, isn't there? It's not just that.
Uh, yeah, so we do write easy read for other people, and most of our income comes from there, but we also do a lot of other things, such as building the tools in the toolbox, which are images, and most of our images are created or taken by people with disabilities. We do have people without, but primarily our team is about 80 to 90% at any given time, people with disabilities. And we run workshops, we do anything to do with accessible communication and inclusion. So we kind of tend to focus on easy read, but we can broaden out, and we do sometimes. And with the international community practice, because I just remembered that you'd asked me about, mentioned that at the start. One of the things that I'd found with the Easy Read community was that there didn't seem to be a lot of collaboration. I wasn't like immersed in it until I started the toolbox, but there didn't seem to be a lot of collaboration and communication between Easy Read providers. So I wanted to start something. I find it really great myself to work with a team and to be able to brainstorm with other people and all that kind of thing. And so I wanted to start a group that could discuss how they were doing things, how they could do things better, and so on. And I posted on LinkedIn one day, and the lovely Sonia from Disability Equality Scotland reached out and said, I'd love to help set this group up with you. And so the two of us did that together. I think it's about 18 months ago or so. And it's a pretty good system for the two of us. We both have our own disabilities. She takes care of kind of the admin side of it. I facilitate the meetings, and I'm not sure how many people we've had kind of in the group, but I think we're probably up around 50 or so. People dip in and out. Some meetings we have a big meeting, sometimes it's a small one. And it's just been fantastic. It's been a really good learning experience, and great for building networks within Australia and outside Australia. Yeah.
Wow. And so, Easy Read's an interesting thing, isn't it? I mean, people may or may not have heard of it.
Mm-hmm.
Is it something that we really only have heard of if we're in the disability community, or is it becoming more widely known now?
I think that for the most part, it is still within the disability community, but we are finding that more people outside that. So we attended the National Disability Summit down in Melbourne earlier this year. And some of the groups who were from multicultural organisations, for instance, knew what Easy Read was, and were interested in learning more and perhaps implementing it with their work. But yeah, I think it is one of the uphill battles that we have, is that we have to teach people what Easy Read is before we can teach them why they need us and why it's so important. But yeah, we enjoy that challenge, I guess. And we really believe that easy read can be for everyone. Yes, it's primarily for people with disabilities, particularly cognitive or intellectual disabilities, but everyone can benefit from easy read. It just it saves time, it saves energy, it helps you to prioritize what you're going to give your time to. Reading a 20-page easy read document versus a 200-page report, for instance, you can decide whether there are parts that are worth reading in full and all of those kinds of things.
Mm. Yeah. And you mentioned also the fact that most of your team is disabled people.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, here we're fellow disability entrepreneurs here. We both work in the space. But why do you think it's important to have so much of your team being disabled people? Is that a thing? Is it a particular policy that you put in place, or is it something that's just grown organically? Why do you even think that's important to talk about?
Uh, as I said before, I did it just because that was, I couldn't imagine not doing it that way. You know, I have a background of decades working with people with disabilities even before um, I acquired my own disabilities and having kids with disabilities. But it took me a while. So, going through the certification process as a certified social enterprise, um, it became clear that writing and providing easy read wasn't a direct impact because we don't actually write for directly for people with disabilities most of the time. And that employing people with disabilities was actually where our main impact was that qualified us to be a social enterprise. And then over time, we've come to realize that, especially now, when I first set up the Easy Read Toolbox over 4 years ago, there was only a handful. Literally, I think there were 5 other Easy Read providers in Australia. And now I think we're probably over 20. So it's a real growing industry. And um, it's kind of an interesting spot to be in. And I'm sure that you understand where you are a social enterprise, you are making impact, but you're also making profit, and you need to make profit in order to make your impact. So you still have to go through that whole selling process. And one of the things that's really unique about us is that we're a social enterprise. So as far as I'm aware, we're the only social enterprise working in the easy read space in Australia. And we're also the only one that pretty much only hires people with disabilities. We don't, while we try to prioritize hiring people with disabilities, we don't always manage to meet that. And we do have a few of our team um, and coincidentally, most of them tend to be carers of people with disabilities or someone who's had some experience. But the lived experience of our people with disabilities, I think, is just so important because it is unique, but it also is so important to have that high quality work that comes from understanding what's needed from personal experience.
Because there's an entire space, isn't there, with easy read where you can't just create an easy read document. You need to do a bit of user testing of it. You need to make sure that the people that are the target audience for that document, who are the people who require easy read, people with cognitive disabilities and various, reading barriers, are actually able to understand it. Otherwise, what's the point? Otherwise, you're writing in a foreign language. But so is that the primary work that the people are doing, or they're not actually, are they? They're taking photos, they're developing the images that you use a lot of, and also doing the hard work on writing the actual documents. You've got a big team of people doing that too.
Yeah, so most of our team only works a few hours a week, and this is by choice and fully flexible so that they can work around their disabilities. But yes, so We have easy read writers. In fact, I believe all our easy read writers at the moment are disabled people, identify as disabled. We do have a broader definition of disability too, by the way. So we consider that some people will just straight up identify as disabled. We have people with chronic conditions, mental health conditions. If people don't themselves identify as disabled, then we kind of tuck it away for, ticking that box. But in general terms, we don't tell them that they're disabled or whatever that might be. We have a cartoonist on staff, actually, who has autism and doesn't consider himself disabled. We have, yes, our artists, our illustrators, our photographers. We have our feedback group, who are the people who do the peer reviewing. And we have quite a decent sized group of people who are available to do that. We do find it a bit more difficult to have people with with intellectual disabilities in that group. So just a shout out that if anyone knows anyone that might be interested in doing that, get in touch. But we keep it to everyone with cognitive disabilities. And in fact, with our peer review service, we don't build it in as for every project, but we do suggest it for every project, and we've kept that very much at cost. So we pay people well for their expertise to review the documents and provide feedback, which is actually quite difficult, especially when you're not a confident reader. And we just take a couple of $100 to project manage that, and we don't actually make any profit out of that particular service because we want to keep it really low cost so that as many people as possible will be willing to take that service on board.
And you've been doing, for people who are watching or listening, this isn't just about the occasional info sheet or something, is it? You've been doing some quite large projects for large companies and government agencies where you're doing hundreds and hundreds of pages of document into an easy read format. So these enormous projects, what are you finding the type of work that you're doing these days?
What I find is that it's never what you think it's going to be. Like, we don't seem to have a typical day or a normal day in the Easy Read Toolbox. So our biggest project for 2025 was actually working with ING Bank. And that was a very exciting project, working on their website and taking some of the content, some of the more important content, and writing that up in Easy Read. And that was an amazing challenge because it was quite a short project with a lot of words that we were putting into it, and making sure that, it was within the legal requirements and that it actually said what it was supposed to say. When you see instructions on how to set up your bank account and they're all out of date. So, making sure that it was actually part of that. We do a lot of work for government departments, particularly DFAT, and actually for universities as well, which is fantastic. Maybe mainly for disability related research and projects, but I think that hopefully universities will start to take that up and push it more widely, especially with people like Evie, who's working in that space and trying to help universities to be more accessible.
The fabulous E.B. Gannon, who, of course, was a recipient in last year's awards. Catch the podcast on our YouTube channel. So what are some of the barriers or roadblocks that you've experienced, you personally, but also the toolbox in doing your thing, in getting out there, seeing your idea realised, getting people to accept it?
Yeah. I think for me personally, my disabilities are caused by chronic health conditions. And so that means that my time and energy is quite limited. And so I work under 20 hours every week. It's usually maybe 10 at the most. Some weeks it is more, but a lot of the time, 10 weeks is 10 hours a week is actually quite a lot. So that obviously limits the amount of work that I can do. I was able to use my NDIS funding to get some support with that, but that has now changed as they've been cracking down on everything. So um, I guess that's going to just be bringing more people on board in the team or expanding the roles of the people in the team. In terms of the toolbox, and I think this does come back to me as well, is that there just isn't enough support out there for women in business, women in social enterprise, and for disabled women in particular, and people with disabilities generally. Like, I feel that there isn't that recognition now that we can't use NDIS to support us to do the work that we're unable to do because of our disabilities. Um, there needs to be some more recognition from the government of the barriers that we face because, you know, if you're setting up a startup and you're able to work 60 hours a week, I mean, it's not good for you to do that. And I don't recommend it, but a lot of people might. Obviously, that's going to have a very different outcome to someone who can only work 10 hours a week. And another barrier that really I find difficult to deal with, to be honest, is that I find networking really difficult, and that's physical and cognitive. And a lot of networking events are on, you know, after work, and that's just a really difficult time of day for me. So I do feel that I see some other people who are kind of going ahead in leaps and bounds, and I kind of think, oh, I wish that we could do that, but um, the networking world and the business world just doesn't kind of work that way. And I guess that's why I found SECNA, which we're both members of, Social Enterprise Council of New South Wales and ACT, actually really good because we're able to do things on our own terms. And I'm also next year going to be setting up a group for disabled women in social enterprise to get together and talk about, you know, what's happening, how things are going, how they're solving problems, all of those kinds of things. And I think it'll be really good to be able to do that in a way that does work for us. Not that you can ever be 100% accessible for everyone. I mean, that's not possible. But I mean, we'll do it in a way that suits as many people as possible, make it work for us.
I think it is something, isn't it? You know, you've alluded to this, and yes, you know, I experienced this stuff as well, but also we've talked about it over the years a number of times between us that, you know, amongst the DLI entrepreneurs space is the way we do business as disabled entrepreneurs is very different, and there's still not a great deal of recognition about that, and yet we're also pretty much in the front line of employing disabled people in proper jobs for proper money. And, you know, so there's a sort of a weird disconnect there. And people like the Department of Industry, which has massive programs to support startups and innovation, but these sorts of systems don't seem to be what they recognise as either of those. So the money often goes to the blokes doing cyber stuff and things, you know, I don't think great. So, but of course we're employing people who otherwise might not get work, or who would be expected to work 50 hours a week or 45 hours a week and not be able to sustain it. It's kind of interesting, isn't it? So there's innovation happening on a number of levels here, which is often not really recognised in the wider world, even though inside the disability community we certainly are aware of it. It's a very real thing.
Yeah. I think one of the other things that uh, I guess quite innovative, but not really. And I feel a bit silly telling you that I'm innovative for doing this, given that I learned a lot of this from you over the years.
I probably learned it from someone else. That's okay.
But the way that we employ people, so we stick away from the merit system. Like we employ for, sorry, the word has completely gone out of my head. It's not capacity, but the
the competency.
potential. Yeah,
Yeah.
we employ for potential. So, and it's a very different. We don't do formal interviews. We do a chat. We might not even interview more than one person. And then we really try to support the strengths of the person. We offer flexible conditions to everyone, whether they've got a disability or not. That's just part of what we do. And people can end up doing things that they never thought they'd be able to do. They can end up doing things that originally had nothing to do with the role that they were hired with. So, and I think that's a really great thing about um, a small business where you can just do things the way that you want, rather than within a big system where every peg has its little space it's got to fit into. But yeah, I get told a lot that the way that we employ people is pretty amazing and very different. Although I think it is hard to explain to people who haven't seen it in action. Like if you say, "Oh, we're really flexible," but people think, "Oh, well, we're flexible. We let people, work between 7 and 7 or whatever it might be," and so it can be hard to convey how we actually do that and what is really different about it.
Mm, yeah. I'm having a moment of having to hold myself back here because I'm suddenly thinking we can talk about that one for about 3 hours.
Yeah,
One for
yeah.
the Disabled Women's Entrepreneurs Network. What what kind of change, if any, do you think receiving this award might make to your work and to the toolbox?
Um,
Apart from the lovely badge you get to put on the website, of course. Yeah.
yeah. I think actually it's going to be really good for me because I've always thought of myself as an ideas person. I mean, I come up with way more ideas than you could ever possibly do in a lifetime. And I felt over the past few years that uh, I'd kind of lost that innovative part of my brain, that I was so focused on the day to day stuff. That I wasn't spending a lot of time actually being creative. And so I guess it's really nice to be thought of as innovative, and hearing in particular how difficult it can be, like in this category, I'm pretty amazed. So I do like to think of myself as innovative, but that have been less so lately. And I love also helping other people to think that way as well. So I think that that'll be a great little boost of confidence um, for me, and just recognition that what I'm doing actually is innovative, because so much of it has just happened. Like it's not like I've gone, "Oh, I want to do something innovative," and then I've kind of thought, what can I do? I mean, I do that sort of thing, but I was doing it for other reasons, and it's just turned out to be innovative. So um, yeah. For the toolbox, I hope that maybe that might um, help people to feel a bit more broadly than that we do only easy read, that we can help with a whole heap of different things, although we'll always have our focus on easy read and accessible communication. But our employment and all those other things, I think a lot of people aren't aware of. So, yeah.
Yeah. I love the way too you've been talking about, which is something that I also spend a lot of time talking to people about, is the way we work differently as disabled people, which we've touched on today, of course, but it is something that, as we move further into the 21st century, the understanding that work looks different now for people. And, the pandemic gave us a bit of a heads up to that. Of course, disabled people were ahead of the jump on that. We're already working a lot online. We're already working a lot remotely. And so for us, that wasn't such a big deal. But understanding that work doesn't have to be that 9 to 5 slog, that it is about building work around how it best suits you, and you actually become more productive because you're not flogging yourself in a way that isn't natural for you, those sorts of things. And I love the way that, you've been part of that work in the sort of community that I've been around, the frontier sort of organisations and people who are reshaping what work looks like and how we approach work, and the recognition of that, particularly when your organisation like ours at the DLI is interacting a lot with government and big corporate and the tertiary sector, and many of those organisations are still very welded to that 9 to 5 Monday to Friday kind of 600-year-old bank bloke kind of work model that we're all trying to bust through and get rid of. Yeah. So what's next for the toolbox? What's 2026 going to look like?
We have a lot of ideas. We're planning
What
on.
a surprise!
Well, yes. We are planning on developing a whole suite of workshops and training courses that you'll be able to log on to and do in your own self-paced time. And we're also looking at
what are they about? What sort of subjects? Yeah.
Yeah, so there will be about Easy Read. We're actually about to launch a couple of free workshops that will be on our website thanks to funding from the ACT government. So keep an eye out for those in January or February next year. But a lot of the other workshops are going to be really quite broad based on the skills and the interests of the Toolbox team. So writing social stories for people with autism, creating images in Canva, or a whole heap of different kinds of things. But we're also developing a suite around employing people with disabilities and around to help support young people and others in being ready for employment and understanding what that means and understanding what their rights are and all of those kinds of things. We've been working on it this year, but we've just had such a huge year that we didn't get quite as far in it as we'd hoped. So that will definitely be a focus for next year. And we're hoping to have a bit of a kind of coaching, mentoring program set up with that too, because just our own experience of bringing on young people in particular who may never have had an employment experience or have never had a positive employment experience, and working through with them to give them a really great work life has just been so rewarding that, yeah, we want to be able to share that and make it happen for more people. So yeah,
that's a potential big shift, isn't it, in the disability community, that space? Absolutely. Almost out of time, Karen. Almost out of time. But the one question I do like to ask people, just to put you on the spot, is who is a leader that you admire and why?
gosh, there are so many. Other than yourself, of course, because we've had a long, long history together over the years. I think probably someone who I really admire, and we have worked with her a bit in the past year, which has been fantastic, is Lisa Stafford, who is a researcher and member of the DLI. She's just a wonderful person generally, but her work is so important, working in transport and accessible communities, and just her determination to support other DLI members in terms of bringing them on board to work with them, and just that whole, that lived experience, that recognition of expertise. Yeah, I think she's just one of those people who's not really out there and sort of advocating loudly, but she's just a quiet worker who is amazing. So, yeah, I think she's one to keep an eye on for sure.
Oh, she is. And the fabulous Lisa Stafford, who's recently been awarded a very large ARC research grant, multi-year project. I think she's up at UQ now, University of Queensland. But yes, doing this work with spatial justice. I'm excited by the spatial justice work. Fabulous human being, really, really lovely person. Oh, we could talk all day, Karen, and we know that, but alas, not possible. But congratulations once again on receiving the 2025 Award for Innovation in the National Awards for Disability Leadership.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And especially thank you to the judges and to my team for nominating me.
Indeed. All the
Thanks so
judges, hard work,
much.
those judges, let me
Yeah.
tell you. Yeah, very strict, very strict. So good.